Tommy Shepherd.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster for advance sight of the statement. It leads me to my first question, which is, what is he not telling us? What does he know that we don't know about this entire process? Because otherwise, he must know something, because otherwise I don't understand why he continues to commit hundreds of extremely highly qualified civil servants and waste hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money in the service of an objective which we have consistently ruled out. He himself said as recently as March that no deal is something that must be avoided. The Benn Act has made no deal illegal unless his House agrees to it, and now the Prime Minister himself has sought an extension from the European Union to the process in order that no deal can be avoided. Now, I admit the Prime Minister has acted with the maximum bad faith and with all the enthusiasm of a petulant schoolboy, but nonetheless, he has written the letter has been received and accepted. And what that means is that the only way that the scenario that he's planning for can unfold is not only if this House fails to pass the Government's Withdrawal Act, which I hope it will, but also if the European Union then declines to extend beyond October the 31st. So can I ask him, is government policy now based on the assumption that the European Union will refuse to extend the Article 50 deadline beyond the 31st of October? And if it is not, then why does he continue with this wasteful exercise? Because it seems to many of us, actually, I agree with the Right Honourable Member for Rusted. How come this date of the 31st of October has become elevated to the extent it has? I mean, the government has this Halloween fetish now. The only reason that the 31st of October matters, rather than a week later, a month later, or a year later, the only reason is to save face for this Prime Minister. And I think it's a rum day indeed when we have a situation where the government of the day is more concerned about the vanity of the Prime Minister than making good legislation and doing what is good for the country. And isn't the truth really that all this talk of Yellowhammer and no-deal preparations, this is a propaganda exercise trying to whip up fear and anxiety to drive people into the welcoming arms of the Prime Minister's deal in relief and thankfulness? It won't work, Chancellor.
Thank you very much. One of the many reasons why I had hoped that the honourable gentleman had become Deputy Leader of the SNP was the way in which he delivered his questions without notes, with great fluency and authority. And I think all of us in this House recognise what a great speaker he is. What a pity, however, that a very, very well delivered speech, I'm afraid, got one or two fundamental aspects of the position in which this House finds itself wrong. The honourable gentleman asked, of course, about the money that is being spent. As I pointed out in response to my opposite number, the honourable gentleman for Hamsworth, it is the case that this money will be wisely spent come what may, because it is the case that we need to make sure that businesses across the country, including in Scotland, are prepared for life outside the single market and outside the customs union. And it has been the case that that money which the Scottish Government has asked for has been given to the Scottish Government, and the Scottish Government has spent it. If the Scottish Government and the Scottish National Party believed that it was, there was no point in spending this money, then I imagine they would have returned the cheque to the Chancellor of the Exchequer with "not required here." But that was not the case. So they clearly do feel, as we all feel, that it is important to make preparations. He made two other points. He said, why fetishize the date of the 31st of October? Well, that date is the date in law which has been passed in this House and passed by the European Union as the date by which we must leave following the extension of Article 50. It is not a date that was chosen by my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister. It was certainly not a date that was chosen by me. It was a date that this House accepted in negotiation or following negotiation with the European Union. And that is the law. And it is also the case that in law, any extension has to be granted by all EU 27 member states. And we're sometimes accused in this House of being insular. But it is the case that the President of the Commission, the Taoiseach, and the French President have all made it clear that there is no guarantee that any extension will be issued. I think all those of us who value relationships with our friends and neighbours in Europe should take heed of what they say. No extension is guaranteed, no certainty exists. That is why we must back this deal, and I hope that the Scottish National Party, which has done so much to say why no deal is unwelcome, will, at this late stage, repent and recognise that the interests of our United Kingdom are served by their presence in the lobbies supporting this deal.